It's always been my way of thinking, my way of living. I think excess has always been my only way to define what should be or not the way to keep going. Too much is not enough. It's my way of looking at the world and being part of the world. And this work in particular, I think, shows this kind of being too hungry, wanting too much out of reality, wanting too much out of a single situation. It's not photography as a way of looking. Too many times in the history of photography, it has been seen as a territory of excellence du regard, you know? I mean, who has the most subtle, the most intelligent, the most poetic, the most beautiful insight in the world. And my understanding of photography is totally different. I see photography as the art of taking control and power of one's position in the world. So it's really photography as a way of experiencing reality, of relating to the world, of the art of perspective and not the art of description. I really tried to bring back photography to life, to abolish this arbitrary barrier we end up living with. This is what happened, I think, even between myself and I, you know, like slowly during the years, I ended up being an image myself, to transform myself to the state of image. I wanted for so much time to become one of my own characters. I wanted to integrate the photographic frame. I wanted to become just like one of these little characters moving around, and slowly I became image myself, and I was able to, as an image, to integrate this bigger image of reality. And slowly this, of course, helped me to do the same in a more physiological way, in a more physical way, to deal with my own flesh, to deal with the mere reality of the world. So in the end, it's a strange mixture of fiction and life. It's how you use fiction to bend life itself. But basically, I see the world as being undermined by two violences. You know, one which is institutional, economical, and I do try to document this violence anytime I can, and I do go to war to photograph migrants and factories, and I mean, I do try to belong to my time and to my society. But the other violence, which is my violence, which is a violence which is inside me, and I think I do belong to this violence in this world, is the violence of crime, let's say, of, you know, like all this narcotic and underworld. And of course, you can never justify it. This violence, which I call the violence of the night, you know, it's like the violence of crime. And it does include the violence of the body, the violence of sensation. All this drug trafficking and body trafficking, and everything is for sale and everything. And the first victims of this violence are the perpetrators themselves. You know, it's not a violence which is directed to the other. It's primarily directed to oneself. And this is my violence. You know, it's a world I grew up with. I mean, it's a world I've been living in for the last 35 years now. This violence, even though I cannot justify or excuse it, I can only go with it. I can only keep being part of it. And so, even not being apologetic, I'm not condemning it. I think to me, this ecstasy, it doesn't matter if it comes from sexual or narcotic perspective, but it's a way to get as close as possible to death. You know, I don't hope to solve any issue. I don't even hope to understand anything. It's just a way to deal with mortality, to deal with a void, with a emptiness, and to get used to it. To try to not to get scared of it. So it's really, in some ways, some kind of apprentissage of death, you know, like how close can you live to it? How used can you get to it?
Esto es como estar en el límite del precipicio y no saber por qué.
This is not on an intellectual level. This is really in a very concrete way. How can you every day reinvent your destiny so that you end up living the reality of death in your own flesh, in your own body, in your own life? This repetition and the boringness of this repetition is much more interesting than finding new ways or different ways. I'm not very much interested in exotics of sexuality. I'm more really into understanding sex as an existential attempt to be, or at least to get closer to the consciousness of what being means. So yes, it's kind of pathetic and tragic in the same way of being, of state of being. Of course, my blocks of images are not very dramatic in the narratives. Not much is happening. Gestures are very repetitive, but even in this repetition, in this stillness, you can understand and you can see much more than of what I'm actually doing, what these bodies are going through. I think the single image, in a way, is much more of a lie, because it pretends to condensate, to process in itself so many answers. This multi-image is a more vague, more banal, but more honest, I think. I guess my main enemy is comfort in always, and to keep moving means I have every day to restart all over again. It's like I have a new city, new streets, new unknown streets, new strange people coming to me, and it means every day I have to renew the kind of risk I'm taking. I see settling down as some kind of failure. I build all my life on this necessity to never protect myself, to never count on what's been done so far, and to really go out naked to the world again, and to make sure I'm crazy enough and strong enough to take all kind of risks again. Photography, art in general, sounds like or looks like some kind of martial art, where you have to be at any time in a physical shape, in mental control. Except my strategy, my protocol is to be totally destroyed and to keep going. So it's some kind of a very ambiguous and very contradictory position to be in. I do try to put myself in a technological state of fragility. So any technique, any material, any tool, which I don't know. So when I discovered this kind of night shot position on the camera, it opened totally new territories and perspectives. And to look at somebody having an orgasm through a surveillance lens is kind of precious experience and moment. I love the way this distance comes into my own life, how you can be part of an experience yourself, how you can be having a sexual experience, and at the same time having this kind of distance which obligates and allows you to have a totally different understanding of what's happening and interpreting the situation in a very different way. So it's like, it makes life more complex, it makes life more intense. I'm not looking for the erotic, I'm really looking for the futility and for the fragility of this position. And when I show somebody in a little room desperately trying to exist, it's not about some kind of strange or interesting sexual habits. It's really about the human figure reduced to its minimal form and minimal activity, and the emptiness around it, and how you relate to this emptiness, and how through consciousness, through sensation, you hang on to life. Most of these images come from total hazard. The bodies move and get form and disform, and there's a kind of break into abstract shapes. So you cannot really control these shapes. But yes, I think I'm influenced in a way that, always my nightmares, and especially when I was a kid, a teenager, I was taking LSD, and I remember all of my nightmares looking like Bacon or George Grosz paintings. I think we all have some kind of aesthetics to our nightmares. I've always tried to make sure that photography was not some way of illustrate an idea. It was not a way to prove something. I try to make sure that photography keeps being a question and not an answer. Everything is imperfect in my way of working, in my way of showing, in my way of being, and I think this fragility is precious in a world and in an artistic context where everything is so controlled. I try to get to protect myself from this efficiency. in the end, what really brings everything together is this kind of impossibility to reach a meaningful, coherent point and getting lost on the way.